So thank you, Charlie, for your talk about anger. So as Charlie was talking, I realized that the same letters. As Charlie was talking about anger, I realized that the same letters that make up anger also make up range. And I also realized that if you put a D in front of anger, you get danger. So there you go. Doesn't mean anything, but that's what my mind does because I play too much Wordle. Okay.
Your mind is deranged.
There you go. Double D. Yeah. Stan said my mind is deranged. So yeah, that means it's off range. It's deranged anyway. Okay. So I want to talk, before I ask you questions, I want to talk a little bit about anger. Could you show me the quote that you read? Yeah, so this is a very goody two-shoes quote.
Which
Willpower alone cannot succeed in suppressing the poison of anger. That's true. Much less the perceptions of self or being that give birth to anger. That's also true. Such ability is only possible through the cultivation of the perfection of wisdom, forbearance, and charity, and their counterpart of morality, vigor, and meditation. So that is the classical goody two-shoes view in Buddhism. Zen is cut through everything.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, just cut through everything. So when you're really angry, instead of cultivating the virtue of wisdom or compassion or whatever virtue you want to, you can't, you're angry, right? You can't. And if you do think you're doing that, if you do think I am cultivating the virtue of compassion by wanting to kill this person, that doesn't work. Instead, look at that anger. What is its substance? What is it made out of? So you don't push it away. You don't even have to label it as a bad thing. You just look at it. What is it? Because what it's doing is it's coming between you and this world. The reason people like being angry is when you're angry, you know you exist. You really know you exist, right? Everyone's experienced that. Yeah, I exist. That person's so horrible. I know I exist because that, right? Everyone experiences that. That's self-right, whatever. So yeah, everyone's very attached to anger because it really reinforces this sense of the false self that we all have, this constructed self that actually has no substance. So anger is very interesting. Also, when you're really happy, look at that too. No one wants to do that. Look at that and say, what are you made of? What's your substance? Because that's also getting in the way of reality. In particular, when you're really, really super happy, it often gets in the way of compassion because you just can't notice other people suffering. So, yeah, all this stuff, just look at what are you made of? What are you? That's very important. Then you don't have to worry about cultivating virtues because they just.
The guy with the T-shirt. A lot of people are motivated by anger.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. For the record, for the recording, Charlie talked about this guy who said, lift with anger, like, he had a T-shirt, because he's a power lifter or something, lift with anger, there's all this weight, like that. Okay, it makes you happy. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to say about anger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to say one more thing about anger. So yesterday I went to a Zoom funeral for a friend of mine who was a teacher at another Zen center. And when he retired from being a teacher and his successor at the Zen center, they got into real disagreements and real anger with each other. And he was basically kicked out. And a new group of people kind of came over. There were, the people who liked person A and the person who liked person B, and person B was now the teacher. So the people like person B stayed and the other people left. And then person B left for other reasons, and suddenly, they had no teacher. And then person A died and there was this funeral. And the room was packed. all these people came out of the woodwork to mourn person A and said beautiful, beautiful things about him. And I kept thinking, when he was alive, he didn't know any of this because the community had just dissolved and reformed. And I just thought, let people know, you know, and this mutual anger of A and B, because that's really what it was. Don't do that, people. Just don't do that. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of reasons why we might be pissed with someone, and someone maybe did us wrong and maybe we did them wrong. But this, you know, throwing people off the cliff in your life and trying to keep people away from other people in your life, just don't do that. Just don't do that. I was just struck, oh, if only he were here to see this, it would have meant so much to him. So, yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Are there any questions? Maddie, take the microphone.
I used to be a chest breather, and now it's kind of traveled downwards,
Okay?
but I'm having trouble, like my lower abdomen kind of flutters. Is that breathing from your hara? How do you get stronger there in breathing?
Boy, what a technical question. So everybody starts out as a chest breather. I mean, not when they're infants, but at some point along the way, we learn to do that. I don't know how, but we just get the idea that we're supposed to breathe from here, you know. And of course, that's not, you know, so everyone understands about, you know, when your stomach goes out, the breath comes in. When your stomach goes in, the breath goes out. And this natural way of breathing, so the stomach goes out, the diaphragm falls, the air comes in, the stomach goes in, the diaphragm goes up, the air goes out. Everybody knows that. I believe everybody, and not everybody knows, but everybody on camera and everybody in the room knows that. So, so your question is, you want to bring your energy down to the canonical place here, right there, and you want to bring it down there, and you find that it flutters. Well, that's interesting. Don't worry about it. Okay? So just let your energy settle. Don't push it down. Let it settle. It's almost, I mean, it's not subject to gravity, but if you let it feel like it's subject to gravity, just leave it be and just keep your focus, you know, your physical focus here, right there. And then it'll stop fluttering when it's ready to stop fluttering. Yeah. Yeah, we don't try to control things in Zen very much. We just sort of let them be and observe them. And if they're mental things, we ask, what are you made of? What is your true nature? But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay? If you get a stomach ache, see a doctor. Okay? Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Pass the mic.
What is a good mantra or other technique to use when I'm, like, especially at work and it's a really stressful day, and I don't, you know, wherever I am when I don't have the luxury of being able to sit, what is a good thing that I can do to quickly kind of bring myself back to center?
Well, that really depends on you, but most people recommend deep breathing. Just, you know, do a few breaths. That'll calm your body down and hopefully calm your mind down a little bit. You can't really do meditation in a situation like that. So if you are in a situation where, like, your boss is really angry with you, I don't know what, I forget what your job is, but maybe you have this boss and they're really angry and they're yelling at you or doing something nasty to you or something like that, or, you know, and if you think there's you know, that's taking you out of the situation, right? So that's not so good. I remember reading, what was that? That very early Zen book about the guy from Denmark who went and sat in Japan. It's a classic.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but this very early on, when Westerners were first starting to do Zen in massive numbers relatively, this guy goes to Japan and he's waiting in the airport and his plane is delayed and he's very annoyed, so he decides to sit there in meditation. And that always struck me as, why? You're in an airport, you should be in the airport. If you're in an airport, be in the airport, 100%, just, that's Zen, going to some kind of trance. That's not Zen, that's, whatever. So my suggestion is to, breathe, and then, the question of what is this? It never hurts. And I always find that realizing that no matter how horrible somebody is, that person is doing their best, that really helps me. And also that it's probably not about you. When people are giving you a hard time, almost always it's about them. I mean, you may have done something dumb or stupid or messed up, whatever. But if they're upset with you about it, as opposed to saying, "Did you realize you crossed this I and you should have dotted it?" That's fine. And then you can, dot the I instead of crossing it. But if somebody's yelling at you, that's them. That's not about you. Yeah. So, open heart. An open heart is very important. Now, whether that'll help you in the situation, I don't know. But yeah, right. Yeah, I used to be involved in math education. I ran workshops for teachers, and I was also on a lot of national committees. And this was in the 90s, the 1990s, not the 1890s. And you'd be amazed at how much passion went into this. It was incredible. It was sort of like the wars over history now. But it was like these wars about, and we call them the math wars. That's what everybody called them. And to some extent, they still kind of exist, but at a much lower level. And I would go to meetings, and I, was seen as a representative of a certain faction. And people would yell at me. And I just, I would get flustered. And people would come up to me and say, how could you be so calm? And I said, I've been practicing Zen for 15 years, or whatever. But it was true, because I knew their yelling at me wasn't about me. It was just their yelling. So anyway, right. Yeah, one time I was at a big family reunion, and I've been practicing for about 10 years, and one of my uncles came up to me and he said, "How come you're so nice?" And I said, "I've been practicing Zen for 10 years. Your hair looks good. I've been practicing Zen for 10 years. I like your socks. I've been, anyway." Thank you for your question. That's one of the everybody's questions that they have, because we all, yeah, right. Yeah, I'll tell you the story sometime of trying to return some technology to Best Buy. We succeeded, but yeah. Are there any questions? Other questions? We started late, so we can go a little bit late if people have questions. If not, oh yeah. Sure, you can ask a second question.
Sorry, I'm just curious if you could say, who are the figures on the icon behind the altar?
You mean the painting behind the altar?
Yes.
I don't know all of them, but Stan, maybe you could stand up and point, since it wouldn't be effective if I did. Or maybe Tom, you're taller. So there are 4 figures, 2 to the right and 2 to the left of Buddha. You can see them. They have white sleeves and red You see, yeah,
Okay, yeah.
yeah. So those are the four great bodhisattvas. One of them is Manjushri, the bodhisattva of wisdom. One of them is Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. One of them is Samantabhadra, the bodhisattva of action, and one of them is Jijang Bosal, the bodhisattva of transition. And we chant to those four in our morning bell chant. We did today. We do first Manjushri, then Samantabhadra, then Avalokiteshvara, also known as Kwanseum Bosal, and then Jijang Bosal. So those are those four. And I'm not sure who some of the others, the people with swords, those are the asuras. Those are the beings that sort of guard the Dharma. Whoops. And they are angry. They're angry celestial beings because that anger helps them lift weights, you know, it's like that, you know, it keeps them vigilant. And then there are other people in there, and I'm not sure, sometimes there's Bodhidharma. Do you see Bodhidharma there? He usually has like a kind of veil over his head.
Yeah, isn't he the one with the crazy eyes?
Yeah, on the left, yeah, I think there's Bodhidharma in there. Sometimes there's the god, the mountain god, because Korea is a shamanistic culture, and the mountain god often makes it in there. He'll have white hair, he often... Is the one with the beard over there? Okay.
Upper right, is that?
Yeah. See, it's very small for me, so I can't see very well.
He's the real old character.
Yeah. Right. And in Buddhist temple complexes in Korea, you will have a separate building for the mountain god. Yeah. So yeah, the mountains. Yeah, I've always heard of mountain god, mountain spirit. Yeah, whatever it is, mountain being. Yeah. So yeah, so Buddhism kind of absorbed shamanism a little bit. Although, I mean, shamanism certainly exists outside of Buddhism in Korea, but anyway. Yeah, on the Korean mountainsides, you probably still have, you'll have these shamans living in these little huts, and you'll have the Buddhist temples, and sometimes the shamans do stuff to Buddhist iconography, and sometimes the Buddhist monks do something to Shema. There's a, you know, they're not always friends. But yeah. And it, yeah. Yeah, right, because Japan has Shinto, which is close to shamanism. It's not quite. It's more like earth worship, yeah, rather than powerful beings. But yeah, and yeah, you might have heard. So in Japan, the Shinto makes its way into Buddhism as well. And does anyone recognize any other figures? Because, as I said, I can't really see very clearly.
It's supposed to be, I think, the kings of the four directions up there someplace.
Yeah, so the kings of the four directions maybe are up there. Not all beings get in there. There's some temple paintings, these are called, what, tangas, right? There's some temple paintings that have women in them, but we don't. There's one at Providence. They have two at Providence, one behind the main altar and then one on the side altar. Because a big temple will have a side altar, and the one on the side altar has, I believe, two women. Yeah, you have like devotees, you have just practitioners in these sometimes, few people that have no particular identity. Yeah, it's very much like, you know, in a Christian church, you know, and in a Christian church, you know, you always have the benefactors who gave the painting, who financed the painting, and they'll always be like kneeling straight up, you know, with their legs straight in this posture, and they'll always be like in one of the corners, usually very tiny. Yeah, right. We're all human, you know. So, thank you for your question. Yeah. Are there any other? Yes.
We should write that up and have it available.
What
The
you-
ideas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe sometime we'll write it up and we'll put it someplace where secret someplace. Okay, are there any other questions of any kind? Nobody online has a question. Wow, this is amazing. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We can stop recording.